Welcome to Beyond the Reiki Gateway, a podcast reserved for the spiritually curious. Journey further with Reiki Masters Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy through in-depth conversations, many featuring inspiring and intriguing special guests to enrich your unique spiritual progression.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathleen Johnson here with my co-host Andrea Kennedy. And today we have a very special guest from Edinburgh, Scotland. Chris Ratter is a spiritualist medium working within a specialist branch of trance healing known as psychic surgery. And interestingly, he's currently the only psychic surgeon residing in Scotland. Chris runs healing clinics. He holds trance mediumship and healing workshops. And he delivers talks and demonstrations on these subjects in Scotland, England, and the Republic of Ireland. Chris, this is so fascinating, and I want to thank you again for coming on and talking to us about your work.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. It's a pleasure to come on with yourself and Andrea. I don't also just work in Ireland, UK. I'm all over Europe. Yeah, I work in Sweden, Germany, and Turkey. Next year I'm into Switzerland also. So yeah, I work all over. Very, very privileged to be able to, to go forward on behalf of the spirit world. Yeah.
I can't wait to start getting into this with you, Chris, because number one, that whole phrase, psychic surgery, that just has my interest right there. But you do a lot of different things in the spiritual world. And I wanted to ask you a few questions. And you have this new book out. It's not your first. And as I was perusing this new book called An Exploration of Trance Mediumship, I noticed some terminology that you use that I'd heard before, but I'm wondering if you could help us understand your take on some of these terms that probably our listeners have heard before we get started. And so spiritualism, if you could explain to us what is spiritualism, and then mediumship. At least for myself, I had an idea about what mediumship is, but I think there's so much more to it. And there's, I think, different styles of mediumship. So could we maybe start there with a little bit of background?
Of course. Spiritualism is really about the path that you follow and what you do within this sort of spiritual movement, what your belief system really is and what you believe. I suppose for myself, I've always been quite a spiritual person, but for spiritualism for me is about really walking the path of being true to the energy of the spirit world or the universal energy. So spiritualism for me is all about them being able to become forward, be part of my life, and to have an acceptance of them. And the more that we accept those that work from spirit side of life around about us, the more clearer things become with us as we open up and don't really have a closed mind. So for me, spiritualism is all about opening up to the unseen world and just accepting it. For some people, I suppose, they look at spiritualism as upon a type of religion. When we have all different takes, we have Catholicism, Christianity, all that kind of thing. Spiritualism is just another path that people follow, but it's a belief within myself, obviously with the spirit world, what's there. And we've had, undeniable proof over the years, that the spirit world is very much there. And it's just really about being part of it and just accepting and trying to be a sort of spiritual person.
I can imagine that for you, doing this so many years, your ideas and your understanding has probably changed a lot.
Yeah, I think it changes all the time, to be very truthful. I mean, even like when we talk about spiritualism, I really want to think I'm more of a seeker of the truth, to find out exactly what's there. I don't believe everything that I read or hear, but I do believe, when things come to me, I have thoughts within my own mind to investigate it a little bit further. My thoughts on my path and certain things within the spirit world changes all the time. But the one thing that doesn't change with the spirit world is the unconditional love that they give to us. That's unconditional and it's there forever. So my point of view never ever changes within that field of the love that they bring. And also my understanding that life is eternal is another thing, obviously, which I believe in, you see. So and that's obviously to do with the spiritualism. We know that the physical body withers and dies through time. But the internal soul, who we are, our spirit within, is that life force that lives forever. So when we pass over from the physical world and we go into the world of spirit, or the vibration of the spirit world, we know that all our thoughts, our memories, who we are lives on forever. So we're dealing with the spiritual energy of the people and not the physical.
Yeah, I love that. And then what about that topic of mediumship? Because are there different kinds of mediumship, or can you help us understand that?
There's different types of mediumship that people follow, and the wonderful thing about the thing that we do on behalf of the spirit world is you have the choice to be able to pick what type of mediumship you want to do. There is a type of mediumship where mediums develop so that they're able to make contact with communicators from spirit side of life, so they can give messages from their loved ones, which is a wonderful form of mediumship. But they're able to link into those round about that come forward, so they give information to the recipient, to the person who wants the information, to maybe give them confirmation that their loved ones have arrived safely into the spirit world. They no longer carry that physical ailment that took them there, or they want to just make sure that so they understand that they are round about them all the time, and just to give them that understanding that they are safe and they're still very much part of their life. The other type of mediumship is what we call is the healing mediumship, which is wonderful. And there's all different types of healing. The best type of healer is the one who is honest to the energy that comes forward and not try to take control over it, but just to have the open heart and to understand that we are only of service, we're only the vessel for those people who wish to come forward and work through us. And the more that you can open up to that type of healing, then the spirit world can do more and more things with you. But it's a wonderful thing for the healing mediumship, or the medium, to be a healer, because for me, healing really is at the pinnacle of all mediumship, and everything falls underneath the umbrella of healing mediumship. But what happens is, with a healer, when they come forward and do that healing, it's just about just allowing, the spirit world to take the energy and to be part of it. I mean, we are the medium that's an integral part of what takes place. But what we must understand is we are not the energy that cures anything. We're only the person who allows the energy to flow through us. So we are the conduit for them, so that we allow the energy to flow. To be very true, some wonderful results. I even when we look at mediumship, there's so many different types. Even when we go into trance mediumship, trance mediumship for me is a far purer connection. Even when we talk about trance healing and all that kind of thing. And maybe the best way to explain healing for you, or the healing mediumship, when we do Reiki, as you said, obviously in your shows about Reiki Gateway, you become the vessel from those in spirit side of life. So what you do is you open up to that energy that comes forward, and you allow that energy to pass through you and to make contact into the spirit of the person that you're given the healing with. When we work in the altered state of trance, what actually happens is we develop over a long time to allow someone who has went to spirit side of life that no longer has the physical body. They become known as the discarnate spirit. We on this side of life and the physical body are called the carnate spirit. So when you're on spirit side of life, you become a discarnate spirit. And what you do is you want to come back and you want to help move in that healing modality. You have to be taught and trained in spirit side of life, because we're working with an energy based healing force or a vibration. So what happens is those people on spirit side of life train so that they're able to come back and bring their life force energy into the life force energy of a healer on this side of life. But they don't enter your body or possess you or anything like that. With the altered states of trance, what actually happens is the people come forward, they blend into your auric field, and then they allow the energy to come forward. Now, spiritual healing or Reiki, when you make your healing, either you're above or you make contact onto the physical body of the person, or if you're above, what actually takes place is you're connecting into the spirit of the person. So when the Reiki energy comes forward, or the universal energy, whatever you want to call it, or spiritual healing energy, what happens is that energy, it has a healing intelligence within it. So it goes through the body of the person. It searches, looking for something that needs the adjustment within, or the vibration looked at, or that healing element. And so that searches because it has a healing intelligence behind it. But when we work with the altered state of trance and the healer is blended into you, what happens is it's more direct. So instead of having to search through the spiritual body and the physical body of the person who's looking for a healing, is the healer comes forward from spirit side of life that's blended into your energy, sends that healing directly into the person's concern within the spiritual body. All healing must take place within the spiritual body, because we're dealing with those from spirit side of life. So we're dealing with the spirit world. If you don't connect to the spirit of the person who's come for the healing, what actually happens is there isn't a connection being made. So what you're just giving your life force and your own energy. So you just give that into the person. And then the person will feel when they get off that bed or they get off the chair, they will feel completely energized, but you haven't allowed the energy to heal anything. All you've done is give them a boost of energy. So when we look at healing in all its varieties, we must connect with the spirit of the person that lies within, because we're dealing with spiritual energy. And the wonderful thing, you talk about Reiki, and Reiki is a wonderful, wonderful form of healing. So is all forms of healing. But I find that Reiki is more palatable to people, because when you say, I do a Reiki healing, lots of people will accept the Reiki healing. But very often when you say I do a spiritual healing, that word spirit sometimes makes people a little bit fearful of it. And what I really want to say is nobody should ever be fearful of the spirit world, because the spirit world is full of unconditional love. And all they want to do is to show people that they're able to help just by being given the opportunity through a medium, healing medium, or through a platform medium, or even a trance medium, just so that they can make that contact, pick the right person, and give that healing in what's required. So there is all different aspects of mediumship. And we can go into, obviously, look at physical mediumship, which really is the ultimate proof, where we can talk about seances were in the dark or under red light conditions, where they were able to lift up seance trumpets and communicate directly through the trumpet to a loved one within the room, or you would get full size or even half size materializations where they would build ectoplasma. The spirit world would come forward and they would show themselves. So you would actually see your loved ones standing in front of you, and they could touch you, and you could communicate with them. So you knew without any doubt in the mind that life is eternal, because you're seeing these people. So there's all different aspects of mediumship. I mean, there's lots of things that people do. Lots of mediums who work psychically, and there's mediums who work directly with the spirit world. So there's all different and varieties of things, obviously, that take place, or mediumship that people follow. I mean, to be very truthful, when I first became aware of the spirit world, I was fearful of it. It really was. I was at the stage where I thought to myself, am I going mad here? I was very unsure. I was seeing things, see shadow people. I could see lots of different things. But it's because I didn't understand what it was. And very often we watch films or we hear of terrible stories of ghost stories and all that kind of thing. So, lots of things are implanted in our minds. So we're fearful of it. But since I've worked more and more within the field, I'm more afraid of the living than I am of the dead, to be honest with you. It's just a wonderful, wonderful journey. It really is, honestly. And to be part of it, I really feel so privileged. I feel it's an honor to be of service to the spirit world. But I don't praise the spirit world. I give thanks to them, because they're good companions to me. And I give thanks to everyone from spirit side of life who comes and works through me for the betterment, to try to help people. The person who should be praised is divine creator, God, universal energy, whatever you want to call it. Because even those in spirit side of life, they're working. So they're working, on behalf of the divine creator.
That's wonderful. That really is. I think gratitude is so important when we are working in this realm. It's something that I know Andrea and I agree on. We always offer gratitude daily, multiple times a day, to spirit, to Reiki, to the source, for the opportunity to do what we do. And I think that's so important, because spirit appreciates gratitude as much as we do here on earth. I think that's a really valuable lesson to share with our listeners.
I think so. Your friends on spirit side of life, the ones that you will get to know, and the ones that work with you on a regular basis, they do become very good companions to you, and they do become very good friends. And the spirit world has never let me down. I mean, I've let the spirit world down because I'm human. I maybe shouldn't have done that, but they've never let me down. They've always been there when I've asked them to come forward, and they've always gave 100%. And that's what I can guarantee. Even when people come to see, what the spirit world can maybe do to help, through my type of mediumship, or the people that work with me. When these people come to see, I just open up to it and just give myself to the energy. I don't promise anybody anything, because I can't cure anything. I'm just the healer. And it's just about them just being able to come in and do it. I understand that the energy comes from their side of life. I'm only the vessel. I very often hold counsel with Henry on a regular basis. And I'm not saying he gives me all the information that I want. He certainly doesn't give me the lottery numbers, I can assure you that.
Uh-huh.
But he does give me lots of information when it's relevant. There's lots of information in the spirit world, when we put a thought out to them, then they don't really answer you because you already know the answer anyway. The wonderful thing about the spirit world is those in the spirit side of life are intelligent people and they have free will. But we also have free will here. And those in the spirit side of life are not here to hold our hands and to be able to walk us down the road or every moment of our lives. We have to learn to make mistakes, and we live with the good ones, or the good things that we've done, or the bad things that we've done, and that's all part of who we are. It makes us who we are, and also helps with our own spiritual progression. We're here to learn on this side of life, but I'm very fortunate that time in life when I was 38-year-old, and those from spirit side of life made an appearance to me, that I followed that line of work because now it takes me different parts of the world and representing the spirit world. I mean, what an opportunity for me. And I think everybody has that ability. If you're open to the energy and you're truthful to the energy, then, the world is your oyster. And the wonderful thing about mediumship is I never, ever think of something, well, I think lots of things are strange when they come forward, I can assure you. But I've never really sat back and thought, I'm not doing that. I've always given the opportunity to see where it leads to. And it's the same with the alter state. When I first looked at doing mediumship, I looked at becoming a platform medium. I looked at, obviously, I wanted to be up there, and I wanted to be able to give confirmation that your loved one had arrived safe in the spirit side of life. They were round about you and they still love you and they miss you, and to give you all that information. And I studied that for about a year and a half until the altered state of trance came forward and the guide came forward and started to blend into me. And when this guide first came to blend into me, I was unsure of what it was. I started to shake violently. And the only way I've never had hyperthermia, but I would think, it was the same condition as hyperthermia. But I started to shake violently. I couldn't control it. And all I could hear was the medium in the background saying to me, it's okay, it's trance. I didn't know what trance was. I was looking to develop platform mediumship. But it seemed to me as if the lady was in a different room. She was miles away from me, so I could hear it in the distance. She's saying to me, it's okay, it's trance. And then eventually when they managed to get me back, into the alter state, I was all over the place, to be honest with you. I mean, I couldn't really think. I was still shaking. I was nervous, didn't know what it was. And they tried to explain it to me, give me rules, but you need to set your boundaries with the spirit world, tell them what you will accept and what you won't accept. And I had sat in two groups for platform mediumship for, about 18 months. And not one of these two tutors who'd been tutors for a long time, or these teachers, had told me anything about setting boundaries. And it's simple things that now I understand it. And I certainly set boundaries when I'm teaching. Maybe one of the problems is that they were so used to being mediums for 30 years or working mediums for 30 years that they set the boundaries within their mind or within the group, that kind of thing, and they don't really think about the student. But I didn't know what it was. And because when I came home and spoke to my good lady, my wife, and says to her, obviously this happened to me tonight, I was shaking like a leaf, and I mean, Gail was looking at me in disbelief. And then she says to me, what is it? I says, it's trance. I mean, she didn't have a clue what trance was. And I remember going to bed. She says, that's fine then. Let's put the light out. Okay then. And I remember in the morning, I felt the energy coming back. So they'd obviously then decided they were going to have another shot, obviously coming to my energy. It's all about setting boundaries, you see. And I remember jumping out the bed and swearing, and I really did. And I was swearing at the spirit world. And well, I was a night shift taxi driver, so I'm afraid I lived in a world where people like some sweary words, I was swearing at this person that was trying to obviously blend into my energy, and shot down the stairs. And I got on the phone to the lady that had been at the group with the previous evening. And she says, "Oh, you're okay," she says, "it'll be fine." She says, "But don't blend with the spirit world." I thought, I'm not blending with anybody. And then I went back to the group the following week, and then she put me back into an altered state. The same person came forward. It wasn't as violent, the shaking, but it was still there. I was still very unsure of it. And then it just sort of progressed from there. Kind of piqued my interest. And I thought, I'm going to go and, look at this a little bit deeper and see. And I'm glad it did, to be honest with you, because it completely changed my life. Mediumship has completely changed my life. For the better, I'll say. I used to ask the spirit world, when I was 38 when I started. And I used to say to them, well, why didn't you tell me about this a long time ago? Why did you not give me the opportunity when I was a little bit younger? You see, because you weren't ready. Well, that's fair enough. They only come to us when the time is right so that you can understand it. But now I can look back to when I was a young man, and certain things I did with the spirit world. I used to be on my own quite a lot with my grandfather. When I grew up, my grandfather looked after me more than my father did, my mother and father. And I would go every weekend and spend this wonderful time with my grandfather. So I really think of my grandfather as, a sort of father figure. But he was a custodian of a castle called Blackness Castle. So he was a gentleman who looked after the castle and the grounds and all that kind of thing himself. And I would go there, obviously, and spend many a weekend with him and listen to his ghostly stories and all that kind of thing. But what he was really doing was he was putting things in my mind for the future. For he had a gift that came down that lineage of the family, but I didn't realise. But what I would do is when I was wandering about the grounds of the castle, I would try to play a game just when I was a very small boy. I would try to shift my consciousness into a different dimension. Didn't know what I was doing. It was a game because I was on my own. But what I tried to do is I tried to shift my thoughts to somewhere else. So to the extent to see if I can knock myself out. You see, and I know that sounds bizarre, It's a strange game to play when you're a young man. But I realise now the spirit world were actually, they were experimenting with me back then to shift my consciousness into another dimension. But I didn't know that at the time. And another game I used to play even with my sisters was I would put my hand above. So I would get them to put their hand like that, and I'd put my hand above. I was just a very, very young man. And I would say to this energy or whatever it was, I would say to them, heat up. And then what happened, they would start to feel the energy coming through my hand, and it would start to go into their arm, and it would start to become hot. And then I would say to them, cool it down, make it cold, and then it would change, okay? And then I would say, heat it up, and then cold. My sisters would say, you're mad, and away they would go. They could feel it, but they couldn't understand what it was. There's something not right here, and then they would disappear. So even then, back in the day, I was experimenting. I didn't know what it was because nobody says to me, listen, this is the spirit world working with you, bringing energy to you, and it's coming through your hands, and to understand it, I didn't have a clue.
I'd love to know. So how old were you when you were tormenting your sisters like that? And
I think I was probably maybe about anywhere between probably 5 and 8 year old.
Really? Oh, how cool. Okay. Can you take us a little bit on a timeline? If you were doing that sort of thing at that young age, how did things progress for you? When did how did it unfold?
I think my first ever experience of ghosts, which I used to call them, or shadow people, when I think I was maybe about 4 year old, maybe 4 or 5. I remember lying in a house, and years ago we used to share a bed with my sisters. Okay, so I had 2 sisters. Everybody did that. It was kind of homes that we had. You didn't have an abundance. It's not like America where you have maybe 4 or 5 bedrooms. People lived in what we call box rooms in the UK. Things are different now, obviously, as things have changed. The 3 of us were in this double bed, in the bedroom. And I remember looking through the door, and so the door was like in front of me here, and people were walking this from left to right, and we had a toilet at the end of in the hallway, and the light was on. But I remember looking, and I could see people walking by constantly. I would see them through the night walking as if they were going to the toilet, and I remember, being really fearful of it. And I remember my older sister saying to me, "Come on, I'll show you. There's nothing there." So she got me out of the bed, and I was obviously using her as a barricade. If you know what I mean, I was shuffling behind her like this. I remember going into the hall and into the toilet, and there was nothing there. But I was seeing these ghost people, and I seen them regular. And that was probably my first ever really experience of them. My grandfather, maybe when I was about 8 or 9 year old, maybe 10, he would take me along to spiritualist churches. It used to fascinate me. You'd have a medium that would be on the platform, and they would say, there's a lady here, and she's standing behind you. And they would give a perfect description of my granny and other people. My grandfather knew. I didn't know these people. And I remember saying, I remember when my granny passed over, I was about 7 year old, I believe. And then he took me along to the thing, and he said, the lady's here and she's got a bad arm. Now, my granny had cancer, which spread into the arm and across her chest. And I remember it because it's just like this arm, but it actually swelled. And then the lady obviously gave a description. And even then, I knew then that she had my granny. And then she says she's walked through the wall. Of course, I was just a young child, and I remember looking through the wall to see if I could see her, She just walked through the wall, but I couldn't. But I suppose the spirit world, they don't want to show you too much in case they make you fearful of them. But I do think lots of children, when we talk about imaginary friends that young children have, I often wonder how imaginary these people actually are. When you're a child, your mind is not conditioned like you go into, adolescence and then to be older. And everything is open. So you see and you hear and you feel with an open heart. And I often think that children see lots of things, but because of the adults in our minds have been conditioned through school and other aspects, that we're inclined, to say to them, or, oh, listen, that's nonsense. Take that out of your head. It's nonsense. There's nothing there. But I often think, that children are there with spirit children and other people around about them. But as they go to school, I know the spirit world sometimes take that gift away from them, because children can be rather cruel towards other children. If you go into a school and you have an imaginary friend, or, you're able to look into the spirit world and see lots of things round about you, and other children can't see it, then you become a target for children. Yeah, I think the spirit world would retract it from you, and then they bring it back to you when the time is right. And you maybe had a little bit of life experience. And this is why I think that when I hit the age of 38-year-old, that everything started to come back to me. But yeah, it's been a wonderful journey. But even when if you like, I'll tell you about that if you want.
Sure. Yeah.
Please.
I was driving a Hackney cab in Edinburgh, a black taxi, and I worked night shift, and I'd been working night shift for many, many, many years. And all of a sudden, what was happening, I would come in the morning, I would always see things in the corner of my eye, all through my life. But I'm not one of these mediums that says I was, at 4-year-old or 5-year-old, I was a medium, and I seen all through my life, because that just didn't happen with me. I seen little things, but just didn't connect. But when I was 38-year-old, I used to come in the morning, and I used to see a little boy standing at the top of my stairs. And I used to think it was my son, who's about the same age, was 7 or 8-year-old. And of course, I would go up the stairs to check Connor, and I would go in and put his light on, he'd be sound asleep. And I would think, why is, it's kind of strange, because I'm thinking he's just a mischievous little boy, So anyway, and then I would go down to have a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or whatever. Then I would go back up the stairs, and I would always, I'd feel cold spots and that kind of thing, but he just didn't connect it. And then I went into my room, and when I put my light up, got myself into my bed, obviously before 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And as soon as I closed my eyes, I would see a white light, and it was almost like someone had took a torch and was shining the torch in my eyes. I would open my eyes, the torch would disappear, and then I would close my eyes, the white light would appear, and I would think, goodness me. And then I thought, that's my son. He's coming, he's sneaking into the room, and he's putting, he's hitting the light switch when I've got my eyes closed, you see. So, and then of course I would get out the bed, I would go through and check on him, and he would be sound asleep. And I think, how strange. And this went on for months and months and months. And I was working night shift, and I wasn't sleeping at nights, but I was still working because I had bills to pay, I started to think to myself, I've maybe got something wrong with me. I couldn't explain the white light. I didn't understand it. There's no manual. And then what I did was I woke up one night, and I was very much aware of lots of people around about my room. I could see them. And then this lady made herself aware at the bottom of my bed, and she walked through the bed towards me. She said, I asked words. Well, she says to me, I'm speaking to you. And she walked through the bed and then turned, which would be to my right-hand side, and walked through the door. And it absolutely freaked me, I mean, it was the person was real. I could see them. And I remember jumping across the bed, and I was quite heavy then. I still am quite heavy. But I managed to crush my wife, with fear. And of course, Gail jumped out of bed and said, what the hell is going on, as they do, all that kind of thing. Or I should say in a delicate voice, hello, Chris, what's the problem, But, yeah.
That's so
and
funny.
I said, oh, it's nothing. I says, just go back to the bed, it's fine. And then about 20 minutes later, half an hour later, the lady came back. And all of a sudden, I heard her saying, I'm speaking to you. And I thought, oh, and I was fearful of it. It really was, honestly, I was fearful of it. And then what happened was I felt I was getting strangled, and really as if somebody had put their hands around me and was doing this. I'm speaking to you. And I thought, and I was like this. Oh my God. You see, and of course I woke Gail up again in a delicate voice, like I've just said, oh, are you okay? And then I said, I'm going to have to tell her, she says, what's going on with you? I said, listen, I'm not sleeping. There's something going on. I says, I'm seeing, this little child every time I come in the morning. I think it's Connor. I says, I'm going, obviously, when I close my eyes, I'm seeing a white light. It won't go away. I says, I'm not seeing darkness. I've never seen darkness for months. I says, and now I'm hearing things and I'm seeing people in the room. She says, oh, listen, we'll speak about it in the morning. And when that happened, oh, lovely. I was like this. Yeah, very comforted. I know, yeah. Speak about it in the morning, yeah, okay. So I don't think I got much sleep that night, to be honest with you. But anyway, in the morning we spoke about it. She went to her work. came back and says, well, what do you want to do? But in between then, for some strange reason, I had the thought within my mind of my grandfather taking me to a spiritualist church. I says to her, I don't know, girl. She says, do you want to go and obviously get, see a doctor to see this if you have a chemical imbalance? And I thought, oh God, but I thought maybe I have to go and do that. And then I says, but listen, I've got this thought, I says, to go and see a spiritualist church. I've been given a thought when I used to go with my grandfather. And I thought, fine. So I went down on the first evening, obviously, to a spiritualist church. And the medium, who was the platform medium, he says to me, can I come to you? So I have a gentleman here who has 2 walking sticks. And I thought, well, that was my grandfather. And he says, you've got healing hands and you've not to miss the bus. Well, I didn't know what the bus meant. You've not to miss the bus. You've not to miss the bus. So I went and spoke to the president of the church that evening. He gave me an explanation of the spirit world and, how certain things take place, but it didn't give me any answers. So we came home that night in the bed. Oh, this is even worse, I suppose. I was lying in the bed and sleeping, and all of a sudden I felt, God, it's cold, So Gail's lying alongside me to my left-hand side, and I opened my eyes, and my bed cover, my duvet cover, was about, I don't know, 1.5 feet, 2 feet above me on my side.
Oh, my goodness.
And I looked, and I thought, it's a funny experience. And I looked, and I could see 2 hands up to the elbows. So I could see 2 arms holding, but nothing else. It was just like, what do you call it, little hand on the Addams Family? That thing. But there's 2 of them holding the duvet up. I was, oh. And then I went down to another spiritualist church and I listened to the lady. The lady had about 50 or 60 in her congregation. And she was, telling about obviously the wonderment of the spirit world. And she was connecting to people and people could take all that. And I was just in awe of the experience. And then she came up at the end and she says to me, can I speak to you? I says, yes. So by the way, she says, you're not mad. And I thought, oh my God, thank goodness, because I thought I am mad. And then she went on to explain that there comes a time within, certain people's energy that they start to do what they call as the emanate a white light. And this white light is shown from spirit side of light. It's in our world, it's not there to the human eye, but the spirit world can see it. They're drawn to it like a magnet, like a lighthouse. So what happens in that gives them the understanding that you can either see them, hear them, feel them, or know they're there. So they're drawn to the white light. And what was happening to myself, why I was seeing an abundance of people, was the white light was emanating. So she explained it to me. And my first reaction was, obviously, when she says I wasn't mad, was thank God. But then I says to her, how did I stop it? Because it was affecting me. She says to me, I give you an exercise. You put a white light around about. You say a prayer, okay? This is before I had joined any development groups or anything. You say a prayer for protection. You put a white light around about you, so you're sitting inside the white light. You push the white light out into your room, so you fill your whole room. She says, and you can push it further into the eaves of your house if you want, and out to the next rooms. She says, and once you do that, nobody from Spirit Side Life can come forward unless it's your loved ones or a guide, okay, or someone that's there to protect you. So I can assure you, I had that white light blown up within the room, down the stairs, and out the front door.
I bet you did.
Oh yeah, my house was bubbled. Yeah, and after about a week, it stopped. And I thought, oh my God, I actually got a night's sleep. But what didn't stop was the white light. And I've never, ever, ever seen darkness from when it started. I never close my eyes and see like pitch black or anything. I always see colour. I always connect with the white light every night. I even sometimes say to the spirit world, even now, listen, guys, can you just turn that down a bit till I fall asleep? But it's obviously the connection I have to them. It always comes into my left eye. So that's what I did. And then about a week after that, I thought, and I was glad to get the rest, I can assure you. But then I thought to myself, if these people are coming to me, there's maybe a reason for it. So maybe if I could explore it, go and look for that quest to obviously find out more about it. And if I could control it, then, maybe I could develop this. And that led me going to different avenues of groups looking for development. And that kind of finding it just opened up my eyes. And then I got a hunger for it. I wanted to read anything I could and take it all in. And, and I thought every medium was up here, if you understand, because I was obviously, searching. I wanted to be like them. I wanted to do my own thing, And it's just, I suppose, it's that hunger that we have. But the most interesting thing was that even when I joined development groups and I still and was seeing people, and even I drove a Hackney cab, people would get into the Hackney cab and I would be aware of spirit coming behind them. So they would be sitting. And then I realized that everyone has spirit contact. Everybody has loved ones that obviously from time to time are around about. I would drive down the street and I would often see things, and I mean, being a taxi driver, your job is to look for passengers. But sometimes you see when you look for the passenger, it was actually a spirit person and there was nobody actually there.
Oh my goodness, that's something.
Very interesting. But yeah, it led me on a voyage of discovery. Truly did, honestly. So
It is so fascinating, honestly.
And did you say you were 38
oh,
or
come on, what do
48?
you think?
We don't know.
I was 38 when it come about.
Ah, okay. Wow. This is just fascinating. I have to say, I could just listen to you talk all
Same
day
here.
long. I mean, I just love how you tell your
I was
stories.
thinking the same thing.
I know. It's like, let's go to the pub together.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking.
That'd be great.
You had this natural gift, going way, way back, even as a child and doing that. And then you were, in a way, reluctant. And then you were off to the races with it. And I'm sure that you have seen so many, indescribable, miraculous, wonderful things. I'm wondering if you could share some stories about healings that you have had the privilege of witnessing or being a part of, or however you would describe it.
I think one of the most wonderful things with healing myself, I remember, to be honest with you, I didn't know what trance healing was. Didn't really know what healing was. Very often when you went along to a healing organization or a spiritualist church, as we call them here, there would be, people who would get up, they'd sit in a chair, someone would come forward, they'd put their hands on top of the person, and you would feel the energy. As you say, as we talk about Reiki, your husband could feel things taking place within, obviously, the structure of the energy around about him. But I didn't really understand, what healing really was about. And I suppose I like to look into maybe sort of the nitty-gritty, the scientific side of things. And I'm very skeptical. Even in my mediumship, at the early stages, if someone says to me, you have this person with you, I wanted that person to prove themselves to me. Okay. Because anybody can say to you, you have a Native American behind you, you have an Oriental gentleman, and all that kind of thing. But it means nothing if you don't feel them yourself, or you don't get to know them, or you trust them, through time, or you get to know a little bit about them. And I suppose one of my, even like on my healing journey, when I was doing obviously into the altered states and looking at trance, obviously I'd sat for quite some, I'll tell you a good story. I had sat for quite some time developing the altered state of trance. So, and trance, the exercises are very repetitive. But what happens each time as the person comes to blend with you, or whoever's coming to blend with you, can be totally different. The experience, because they're coming inside, they are changing your chemical DNA within your auric field. So that's how you develop as a medium. Okay, our mediumship, and what we understand mediumship, in your solar plexus area is your power source. That's your real mediumship, not this. Very often we think this is the intention that we're going to do with the power. So this is not your mediumship. Your mediumship is actually within the solar plexus. That's your power as a medium. And very often if you're working, you'll feel tired. Somebody's been in an altered state, you can feel your solar plexus being pulled within the energy of the spirit world work. When I'm working, I always carry an observer in the room that I'm working with. But also what happens is that the observer is on the understanding that the spirit world will take little bits of their energy into me. There's no point in me getting depleted if I have to use my own energies all the time, as the spirit world has the ability to take a little bit from the observer that's sitting there. So it means that I can work longer, I can do lots of things. It means I'm not tired. That person may get tired from time to time, but I usually feel quite good. So that's what happens within that kind of thing. But my first ever experience, I suppose, of psychic surgery is I sat for many, many years, and I've been doing lots of healings, obviously with family and friends. I hadn't taken it out to the public, because I wanted everything. I'm a great stippler. If anything I do with the spirit world, I want it to be right. But I remember even one story where, they were asking us, obviously someone had got in touch and asked, they wanted to do, scientific research and all things, obviously within the healing energies. And I thought, I had that moment of my own physical mind. I had that moment when I thought, says to myself, oh, people are going to obviously check this. And I thought, well, there's nothing for me to hide from, if you understand. But sometimes the physical mind comes into thing, okay? Because I try so hard to work on behalf of the spirit world and give myself wholeheartedly to them, so that they can bring that energy, so that I can become the purest channel for them. And all healers should do that. All mediums should do that. Take their mind out of it and give yourself to the spirit world. That's what you signed on for, and allow it to come through. And I remember Henry says to me, he says, "What's the problem?" I said, "Well, Henry, I don't know this person, and I don't want anybody writing anything bad about the spirit world." He says, "But you're not being tested." He says, "It's us." And I suppose that was another way to look at things. So what mediums have to remember is when you go to do a reading or you go to do a healing or whatever you're going to do, is you just give yourself to the spirit world. You trust the people that are with you because the energy belongs to them. You're only the channel for it. So that healing result, I cannot say to somebody, "I'm going to take something from you." Although we can reverse the polarity within a healing. I wouldn't recommend it. And I did that with my own daughter. It's written about in my first book, which was called Mediumship Within. What happened is my daughter had swine flu. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and she was delirious. I mean, it's quite serious, but to hear your daughter come up with some funny things, I thought was quite funny. But my daughter had been coughing and coughing and coughing. I'd been giving her healings, over a period of a few days with it. And then I thought to myself, I was laying in my bed one evening, and I thought, I've had enough of that. I'm going to take that from her. So what I did is I came out my bed and I went into my daughter's room and said to her, "Right, sit up." And I put my hands onto her lungs at the back and swing to fix the lungs. And what I did instead of, and we must remember, and I want to say this to all you people who listen, if you do the line of healing or you follow the path of healing, you must become the conduit and allow the energy to come in and out. So it always flows out to you and not in. But what I did is I put my hands onto the back of my daughter's back and I pulled it. Okay, so I reversed the polarity, which we can do. But what happens is you're actually pulling that into you. So I did it with my daughter, and I must say, obviously, the energy was absolutely good for her. She was better in the morning. A couple of days, she had no more symptoms. I developed blood in the lungs. I mean, I went to a workshop and I was coughing up phlegm, but it was blood. And I went down to see, obviously, a local doctor in Wales. And the doctor says to me, "Listen, I think you need to go and get your lungs checked for cancer." But I knew what I had done. I knew that I had reversed the polarity, but I knew that I'd done something I shouldn't have done. And I kept saying to Henry, who's my main control, "Henry, will you come and heal me? You need to help me, guys." It really wasn't a bad way, to be honest with you. And it went on, I would think, maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 days where I really was unwell. I was coughing up all the time, so I was spitting up blood. But also when you cough, you can break little blood vessels within the lungs, within the throat, you see. So I was spitting up blood. And then I was laying in my bed one morning, in the middle of the night, and all of a sudden I heard Henry come along and he says, "Do you want us to heal you?" And I said, "Of course I do." So she "Sit up." So I sat up at the end of the bed, put my feet over the end of the bed. All of a sudden I felt such an immense heat. It was just penetrating through my lungs. And I thought, and I could feel it, and I could just feel everything sort of coming from me, if that would make sense. As if everything was starting to come back together. And then he says, "Okay." And I thought, "That's fine." And he says, "Okay, now rest." Of course, my thing was, says to them was, "Why did you not do that 2 days ago? I've been asking you for weeks, for days. Why you don't do that here?" And he says to me, "Because it's a lesson," he says, "it had to be learned." He says, "And you won't do that again." And he's right. I have never done that again. I never will. But it goes to show you that we have the ability within. And it's not because we were trying to prove something. It's because it was my daughter and I love my daughter. So what I try to do is I try to give my best to my daughter. But instead of allowing them to control the energy to put into the lungs, I pulled what my daughter had out. It doesn't mean I ended up with swine flu, but it means I ended up with some kind of ailment or something that was of the energy which affected me. So it is important to do that. So anyway, let me tell you about the first experience I ever had with psychic surgery. Psychic surgery is an advancement of trance mediumship. You have to be what's known as a deep trance medium. But also what happens is you have to have a quality within your chemical DNA, which is quite rare, which allows physical mediumship. Right? And although there's lots of people developing trance mediumship, physical mediumship is very, very rare. Okay, it was rare 100 years ago, it was rare 50 years ago, and it's very, very rare today, I can assure you. So, but what happens is it allows those from spirit side of life to come forward and just do something a little bit different within your structure, within your auric field. It's just another way that the spirit world can utilize an energy that's within. But let me stress, all healing is important. And those that come to see, whoever healer they're drawn to, whatever, they're guided by spirit side of life because you carry a quality within your own chemical DNA that the spirit will feel that you would be best suited to help that person. Everybody who is a healer has compassion, a majority, I would think, have compassion in their heart. They want to help. And the spirit world want to bring the energy through. So they'll bring the right people to you, because there's enough healers in this world for everybody. There's enough mediums in this world for everybody. And there's enough work in this world for everybody.
That's the
Okay?
truth.
So the spirit will bring these things to us. But anyway, what happened is I've been developing trance healing for quite some time. And to be honest with you, I had lots of arguments with Henry. Henry's my main control, which is probably you would know him better as Harry Edwards, which was a prolific healer last century. But I had lots of arguments with Henry that I didn't want to be a healer. I had no intentions of being a healer. Very often people who come into mediumistic path, very often they come into the healing side first, because they just have to learn to let the energy come in. They can close their mind, put their hands on, and let their mind just wander. The spirit will very often use that avenue to introduce people to other things. So you become a healer to begin with, and then you look at maybe platform mediumship and other types of mediumship, because once you start to understand it a little bit more. So it's an avenue very often that the spirit will use, but it wasn't that for me, because I wanted platform mediumship. And then when the trance healing came and I was studying trance, I wanted to be this wonderful physical medium. I wanted to have what we call seances within cabinet conditions, under red light, darkness, ectoplasm just floating all around the room, all this kind of things. I don't know if your listeners will understand that, but I'm sure a few of them will if they understand what ectoplasm is. But what it is I wanted all these things, okay? And then what happened was I was in a group and I was doing healings. I've been doing lots of healings, and believe me, there's not a lot of books about trance healing. You can pick up books about the Philippines and all that kind of thing, which is a totally different thing. A load of call it psychic surgery and all that. But there wasn't, and there isn't a lot of books on trance, or not that I could find. There's some lovely pioneer books, which I obviously have, the pleasure of buying over the many years. To actually sit down and find out what trance healing was, I couldn't really find out that. And that's why these two books that I have, the Mediumship one was the first one. This one that we have, an exploration of trance mediumship, is an advancement, but it's lots of stories and things and an explanation of guides, what they do, and to try and open people's minds. But both these books were written under the influence of the spirit world. And they really are manuals. That's what they are, to try and help people. To show that if you give yourself to the energy, you give yourself to the spirit world, they will come. It's like that field of dreams. You build it, they will come. That's what the spirit world is about. But anyway, Henry, when I was sitting in a group, I was very much aware of this gentleman come forward. Didn't know who he was, but he kept talking about, obviously channeling through, speaking about the importance of healing, and nowadays it wasn't recognised as much as it was in his day, and the benefits of healing and the potential of healing. I couldn't understand it. And I thought, and then there was another gentleman that came forward, and I could watch him. It was like watching him in my mind's eye, clairvoyantly or whatever, within obviously the control of the person that was there. But this person was doing operations and stuff. And I thought, well, it's like watching someone doing an operation in an operating theatre. What does that really mean? It doesn't mean anything to me, because I'm not a healer. So I'm thinking of just someone who's come and blended with me, showed me things about healing. And then he came forward and he was speaking to obviously members within the group about healing and other aspects. And even when I was in the group, he kept lifting my hands, and I was aware that I was, sending healing to different people in the room. I mean, they'd come back, they'd feel energy coming, and I couldn't understand it. And then what happened was the gentleman who was taking the class at the time, he had says to me, "Do you know who's with you, Chris?" And I says, "No, I haven't got a clue." So he says, "I'm not going to tell you. Wait and see if he proves himself, because this gentleman may just, as you'll understand in spirit, those that come from spirit side of life, some people are only here to help you for a little moment. Some people are here to help you for a short time, a longer time, and some stay with you forever. But they have the right to leave you at any time. We don't control them, don't control us. It's a partnership." So I thought, fine. And then, of course, he didn't tell me. Later on, what happened was I went back into an altered state. This person came forward, and then he showed me a nameplate on a table, and it was H. It was Mr. H, and it had EDW. Who's this? And then I remember seeing a desk when I was at Alfred Finlay College years ago, or what I can remember, I seen the thing. And I went back to the tutor or the teacher of that at the end of the day, and I says to him, "This gentleman is with me," I says, is it Harry Edwards?" And he says, "Yeah, that's correct." And I thought, well, there's the proof, because he's now given me a nameplate. But I still have to work. He didn't say to me, "I'm Harry Edwards, there's my nameplate." I still had to work it out, because it was in, half a nameplate. And I thought, fine. And then he says, "I don't know if he's here, obviously, for a long period or a short period." He says, "But enjoy." And I thought, fine. So obviously, as the weekend went on, he came forward more and more and talked about healing, and I could feel his energy. And it was absolutely wonderful. And then obviously the tutor says to me, Chris, I think you're going to do trance healing. And I thought, no, definitely not me. I'm not doing trance healing. But he says, well, yes, you're going to be. I think he says he's on the body because there's an interest, you see. And then I thought that started off a chain of arguments with Henry. First of all, I called him Mr. Edwards for about 2 years. And he kept saying, call me Henry. It was Henry to his friends and Harry to the public. But I used to call him Mr. Edwards. Okay, yes, Mr. Edwards. Call me Henry. Yes, Mr. Edwards. And I think it was just the respect I had for him, you see. We would have long conversations and he would talk about healing and I'd say, I don't know why you're coming about healing because I'm not a healer. Healing's not for me. And then we wouldn't argue, but he would tell me I was and I would tell him I wasn't because I was going to have ideas of grandeur, what I was going to be doing. And it wasn't certainly healing because, as I say, very often when I went to churches, I'm not being disrespectful because the people have that love and abundance within their heart to help. But when I was 38-year-old, lots of churches I went to, the healers were maybe, 65, 75, 80-year-old. And I thought, I'm not standing behind anybody doing this. Definitely not for me, that. And it wasn't even disrespectful. It was my ignorance. I didn't understand what they were doing. I'm not doing that. And then I had obviously lots of conversations with him. And then one day we were in the seance cabinet and he came through. And very often people think when they're in an altered state that you become comatized. And it really, we talk about, the altered state of trance, but really what it should be called is controlled mediumship. That's really what it should be controlled because that's what it is. They're coming and controlling you. You're giving yourself to them. They're using your subconscious mind. They're in control. So when I was sitting in the cabinet and you can hear, another myth that people also think too is you can't hear, but of course you can hear. And very often with people, I trip myself up even saying that is if you go into into an altered state or you go into a seance cabinet, the first thing that the tutor should say to you is, doesn't matter how deep you go, you will always hear my voice. The most that we can ever hope for in that deep, 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 deep state is probably about 97% of control over them. Because if they have 100%, then you're no longer there. It means you're dead. You've joined the spirit world. So someone to say the spirit will have 100% control over me, they don't, because there has to be a part of you that's involved in it within your energy because they need to utilize you. If they didn't need that small percentage of you, then they wouldn't need anybody to come forward. They would just speak. But you can always hear. I promise you, you can always hear. And I go into a very deep state, I can assure you. But I can still hear what takes place in the room. Now, sometimes I may be standing outside my body, listening to what's in the room. I may be sitting between two people within a seance room or whatever, listening to the conversation that's taking place with them, because it does happen. I can assure you I've been there. So there's lots of different things you can do once you trust them, okay? And we have the ability, we know that when we go to sleep at night time and we go into the altered state of sleep, then the spirit leaves and it goes visit loved ones, goes to a different place, goes for a walkabout, as you see in Australia, all that kind of thing. We're very much aware of that. It's almost like Billy Connolly here. I'm doing the resting, but I'm coming back. Anyway, what happened was Henry had come through one evening in the cabinet and he spoke, but I was listening, okay, to what was being said. And once he gave his explanation of the importance of healing and how important healing was, I accepted. And I thought, well, that's fine. If you're wanting to come through and work with me and allow me to be the best vessel for you, then I will accept the partnership. And I'm glad I did. My arguments was really due to my lack of understanding of what things truly are and the potential that people can have if they give themselves over to the love of the spirit world, if you trust them. Very often when we talk about mediumship, we often say, the spirit world will say, the first thing you hear is trust. But it's one thing to trust, and it's another thing to trust. It's two separate things. Do you know, I was wanting to say, oh yeah, I trust, but do you trust? That's the difference. And once you really trust them, that's when avenues open for you and everything just becomes plain sailing, I promise you. Well, there's nothing plain sailing in mediumship, to be truthful, but you give yourself over to it and then you become more involved in it. What happened is when we did the healing, I was doing a healing with a lady that had got in touch. It was two people. This lady had got in touch and she was a medium, quite a well-known medium in the UK, and in the Scotland area. Lovely lady. But she'd come for a healing, she got in touch. Now, I had not obviously put myself out there to the spiritual community or to anybody. It was just family and friends. Like I say, developing, trying to get an understanding of what this was. Getting the feedback from people's health, scratching my head because I didn't understand it. I thought, how can, it's like you're saying earlier on, Andrea, when you were saying about the energy that comes forward and people feel things. Because I like to know, because I'm very skeptical. within mediumship. I want to know how things work. From all my understanding of it, that ladies can accept mediumship easier than males can, to be honest, because we really want to get in the nitty gritty. It's different for you because you're scientifically based, and the work that you do, and you like to get the nitty gritty. I think it's down to that women are from Venus and men are from Mars, or whatever they call that, this thing. And that kind of thing, you can set things a little bit easier. Well, that's my understanding of it. But anyway, the lady came and asked and said she had obviously a few complaints. Could I give her a healing? Complete stranger to me, which I know very well now, obviously, but didn't know her at the time. Obviously, I'd been recommended through, one of the people in my private circle. And she said, I'd like to come along and get a healing, obviously, bits and bobs. I've been to, look to doctors, different things. And I thought, well, that's lovely. So why don't you arrange for her to come to my house? I didn't have a healing clinic or anything like that. So I had one of these, a healing bed, a plinth, you call it. Gave the lady a date and a time to come along. We set it up in my living room, and I spoke to my wife. And to be honest with you, I was a little bit scared even with that. I'm probably a bit fearedy. That's what you probably think I am. But I thought, I'm not sure about this. You understand? Because I never worked with anybody apart from my family. Anyway, she came along, introduced herself. She was a lovely lady. Put her onto the bed. I went into an altered state. And she had problems with her tummy and other things. So I went round and I was working at the side of the bed. And I remember, them lifting me. And for probably the first year and a half of my development, maybe a little bit longer, is everything was completely with my eyes closed. So they would lift me off the sheet. And even that's a wonderful journey getting to that part. And they would walk me around the bed. So they'd walk right around the healing table. We call it a bed. And what would happen was they would always work about 18 inches above the client. So I thought, oh, goodness me, so I was there doing whatever they were doing. It was just doing a trance healing, so the energy was coming through onto the lady's tummy, or the person was directing the energy through the lady's tummy. And then all of a sudden, I became aware, my eyes were completely closed, and I became aware of a lady with a 50s style hat, these great big sort of nurses' hats, coming like this. I've only ever seen them in the films, but what had happened was I was aware of this lady wheeling in a tray of instruments. I looked and I thought, oh, I've lost the flipping plot. So I seen her come in, and I'm looking, my eyes are closed, mind, and I thought, oh my God. And she's put all these instruments, as they do. And I thought, oh. And then I was aware of the energy shifting within my own energy. And I remember going round to the top of where the table where the lady's head was. Now, very often what happens when I'm working is all of a sudden I would be outside my body. So I would be standing alongside myself, looking at myself, or I could be at the other side of the table, watching my body moving, but I'm not there. So I thought, kind of strange. So I was very much aware of watching my physical body move up to the top of the bed where the lady's head went. And then the gentleman, who I felt was a gentleman, he was doing these bits and bobs, obviously. And then all of a sudden he got instruments, and I watched on the spiritual body, which usually is above, that floats above the physical. And I watched them take instruments and using my hands and pop an eye out, lady's left eye, and put it onto a silver tray. And I thought, and now I really lost the plot. Yes. Oh. But I didn't interfere, you see. And that's maybe why things are different a wee bit maybe for me in my journey, because I didn't let my mind overrule. I just went with it. I had nothing to lose. So I watched the gentleman take all the optic nerves at the back, all these things, and I'm not medically trained. So, I mean, it's funny to see an eyeball and to see all these little, these cords, like blood vessel things, and scrape and move it and work in the back of the eye and separate all up. So it was all like separated, into strands at the back of the eye. And I watched the gentleman intently, or using me with instruments, put it all back together, clean things, wash things, put it all back together, put it back, lift it up, and pop it back into the eye.
Oh my goodness.
And then maneuver it so it wasn't squint eye, I suppose. So they maneuvered it all out. And I thought, oh. And I thought, fine. And then just as I was watching and observing, and then I felt the energy start to change. And then all of a sudden, I was aware of someone pick up a knife and go into start cut here into the thyroid area. And I thought, oh my goodness me, I really have lost the plot. And I was now trying to cut the person. And then, of course, they did what they did. I came back and I sat at the end of the thing, obviously, when the person had retracted from me outside my energy. And I sat and I brought the lady back and I thought, oh my God, I wonder what she's going to say, because that's the human side of us. And then she says to me, oh my God. She said, that was the most bizarre feeling ever. I felt someone popped my eye out. And I thought,
Ooh.
what? And she says, never mind that. She says, it was some kind of mass murderer because I felt it trying to cut my throat as I left. And I thought, oh
Oh my
my God,
goodness.
none of this has taken place on the physical body. But that was my first introduction into psychic surgery. And I thought, my God.
What an introduction. Oh my goodness.
But it's so strange because even when I was quite a young man, I could watch an operation on the television. You know, when you see people getting dissected or getting an operation cut open and all that, fascinates me. But I'm not a doctor, I'm not a surgeon. You know, I'm certainly not going to run around and try and cut people up. But the wonderful thing about it with the spirit world is there was no blood or gore. And I have seen some amazing things. I remember someone who came with a blood disorder in my own mind, because you speak to the client, and I often ask the clients when they come, okay, although the spirit world will give us lots of information of things that come, you know, when the person comes forward, you know, for a healing, and we become aware of some things, but we're sometimes not aware of all things. And I have even asked the spirit world, why? Why do you not tell me that? You know, if you tell me, you know, the lady's told me she's maybe come with diabetes or she's come with a problem with the leg or something. And there's certain things that I've not picked up. Why does the spirit world not tell me that? Then the spirit world will tell you. But you don't have to know. You're only the vessel. Was they're right. But see, it's our mind want to know these things. And I never used to ask anybody who used to come. I never used to ask. I used to find mediums were the worst, to be honest, to be truthful with you, because they were the ones that would try the spirit world all the time. You see, you know, is there anything you want to have a look at? No, no, no. If it's the spirit world, we'll find it. And you knew they were a medium. You know, it's like, okay, then, okay, just lie down. And then what happens, because after they say, I felt that, by the way, the spirit world were on the job, or, yeah, done exactly what I was expecting. So that helps you to build up trust too with the spirit world. And I done that. But when people used to come for healings with me, obviously when we were starting to go out to the public, I never asked anybody. I didn't care. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I cared for the people who came for a healing because there was a reason for it. But I didn't care what it was. I knew the spirit world were coming, and I knew that they would take care of it. And then I was holding a conversation. I think it was a seminar one night. I was speaking to somebody. Someone said, "Do you ever ask, you know, the clients that come to see you what the problems are?" I said, "No, I never do." And she said, "Well, why?" I said, "Well, I don't really have to, because I trust the spirit world. They're here to see the spirit world, not to see me. They're here to see what the spirit world can do to help them. Okay, I'm just the person that helps connect it. That's all." But they say, "Well, if you go see the doctor, you don't ask the doctor to guess, do you?" And I says, "It's probably a valid point. You don't. You don't go to doctor surgery and say," he says, "Oh, good evening, Kathleen. How are you today?" Guess. You tell him, "I'm not feeling very well, or I've got a sore head." I thought it's a valid thing. And then I realised what, even then, the lesson I was getting from the spirit world was that very often people will come to you because you are the last resort, and not because they've had, you know, devastating news, or they've been diagnosed with something terminal or anything like that. But it's because very often they don't feel right, and nobody knows your own body better than yourself. So when people come forward, you know, and they're looking for things, sometimes they just, you know, this is the first point of contact, to listen to what the person has. You know, finding me what's going on in their life, finding the stress, anxiety, and just they need someone to speak to. And then that helps with the healing, it helps them to open up, and it helps the spirit world. So I always must remember, you know, our first point of contact, that we are the first healing you will ever give anybody, is that initial hello, how are you? You know, your bedside manner is very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
connection.
So that's what
Yeah.
happened with my ever first healing of someone in my introduction into psychic surgery. And then when I did that, very often when I first started mediumship and looking at trance, I would go to anybody that would allow me to go into their workshops, because I had a hunger. None of this, you know, you can't go because you're just sitting with this person. I just went. But I had found a tutor that I quite liked, that I felt was quite honest, you know, in his approach to things. And then I got in touch with him and I said to him, "Listen, this is a strange thing that's happened." I says, "I don't really understand it." I says, "But it took place and the woman could feel this." And he says, "Well, don't worry." He says, "I'm back in Edinburgh," he says, "in about 2 months' time." He says, "You can give me a psychic surgery when I'm up." Now, this was a gentleman that I respect, if you understand, because I'd listened to his teachings. He'd been a trance medium for about 30 to 35 years or something, you know, and a good medium, good honest medium, you know. And of course I thought, oh my God, here we go, you know. So when I went and he came up and we had a group, maybe about 10 people, obviously, we should sit for physical mediumship there with him. But he says, okay, he says, if you don't mind the group, he says, Chris is going to give me a healing. I thought, oh my God, And it's strange because you're not really working to the public, you're out doing bits and bobs, but this is always that little fear factor, which is the human side of us. And I thought, fine, and I remember, going into an altered state, working with a person, I became very much aware of hospital, which felt like hospital conditions to me. I remember the person coming forward and working directly in through his tummy and then onto the spinal cord to the back. And this maybe took about 15 or 20 minutes of the healing within the room. And then I came back and waited to see obviously what, he was going to say. And he says to me, well, I can only say that I have experienced for the first time in my life, he says, what I would say, psychic surgery. He says, I felt it taking place. I felt, he says, the incision. I felt lots of things. I could feel things getting moved internally within my body. Although nobody was touching his physical body, they were touching his spiritual body. And that probably was, for me, was the recognition that I knew that I was on the right path on behalf of the spirit world. Because this is someone that I, trusted within my mediumship, and was a very, very an honest chap. I mean, you've no idea. I mean, in my journey, this tutor that I had, I don't think he liked me. But I would turn up regular every time he was there. But he used to say to me, we'd go into an altered state, and then he would say, everybody come back, everybody come back. I'd come back, then he'd say to me, Chris, what was that? I thought, oh my God, I knew I was getting a row, you see. And he said to me, I said, he says, I'll tell you what that is. He says, that was rubbish. I think, sit like that, at the floor, get back down and get it right. But I think because of my line of work, I think I probably needed that. Probably needed that type of tutor because I was working in an environment when you work in a night shift on a taxi, everybody is lovely people up until about 10 o'clock. And then they become Jekyll and Hyde. So you take the Jekyll out to begin with, and then you get the Mr. Hyde's going back after 12 to 4 in the morning. So you're working in that type of environment. So one of the nicest things he ever says to me was, he says to me, after obviously, I was working and doing lots of little things, he's become a very good friend of mine now. But he says to me, Chris, there's nothing more I can teach you about healing. He says, now I have to come and ask you. And I thought, for me, that was an absolute wonderful thing that he said. Not because of where I was, because I don't care who I am or where I was. If you understand, I'm only a healer, I'm only a vessel. But to have the recognition from him, because it's someone that I looked up to, I thought it was absolutely wonderful. And I knew that it was heartfelt because there was something wrong within that energy or something wrong was taking place. He would never have said that. So that really meant the world to me. And it gave me maybe even that more confidence to go out there and just see what, the world flings at me.
That could have very well been the turning point for you in your new career as a psychic surgeon.
I think it was.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense. Sometimes we hit that point, that light bulb moment, that aha moment, whatever you want to call it, and then we know what we have to do. And that may have been the one for you.
I think it was. I trust my guides 100%, more than that, if you can go higher in percentages. And I love the conversation I have with them. I love the communication. Like I say, even the books that I've written, they are under the influence of the spirit world. Because even in my journey, there's lots of things missing. But we do need certain things, And to be very truthful, I work with lots of people. I have mentorship groups in Ireland. I have workshops and seminars that, in Germany and other different places. But I want my students or the people that come to see me, not just students, they're good friends. But I want the people that I give my understanding and my help to surpass my understanding. And I'm inspired by the pioneers of the past. But the mediums that are working today and are honest are the pioneers of today. And the ones that are following us are the pioneers of the future. So the ones that come through, are the ones that they have to surpass my knowledge. And I give my knowledge at workshops, seminars, freely and openly to them. Because it's all about helping them to understand it and not to hold anything back. I found, in my development, certain workshops I went to, And I'm not saying all mediums are like this, but there were certain mediums that held back certain information, and some of them were unaware of the information themselves. You got more information from the spirit world, but so that they would keep you coming back. The idea is to be open with the knowledge, be
Yeah.
open with the understanding of it, show people the exercises, show them how to get the foundations, let them do the hard work themselves. I can't do the hard work for them. I can speak to the spirit world, I can have a look at them, I can see what the energy is between them and my little bit of knowledge. I'm able to help them on their journey. And if I can do that on behalf of the spirit world, give them the foundations. If the foundations are correct, then we can build as high as they like. But if the foundations are wrong, it crumbles. So my job as the medium on behalf of the spirit world is to give them that foundation at the beginning so I can watch them grow. And I want people to surpass me. The first book is a wonderful book. There's exercises in it. It's a bit about my story. There's lots of things in it, my understanding. The second book is more in detail of the spirit world. So it's more of a manual. It's more of an understanding to show you what actually the workings of the spirit world is, and to be able to take your understanding of the spirit world and to know that they're not just coming to give a message. They're not just coming to give a healing. They have jobs. And then we look on to the elemental world. There's bits about that which has happened, and there's other things that's happened recently. We're very much aware of the vibration of the spirit world. We understand the spirit world is a vibration. For me, it's not another world that vibrates alongside our planet. They're here. So what happens is we're looking into quantum physics. So we are here and they are there.
Exactly.
A millisecond ahead of us, but enough so that we can't see them. And then we look at the elemental world, and I've had some wonderful experiences with the elemental world. I don't care if people say I'm mad. I don't care. I've experienced it, and I know what I have seen. But even within that elemental world, in my first book, there's about a little tree spirit that came, and other things with elementals when we're sitting. And we know that they're involved in mediumship. We know that they're involved in seances. We know that they're certainly involved in healing and all these different aspects of the vibration. So we're now starting to understand that even with the elemental world, with nature spirits and all that kind of thing, I mean, they're on our world looking after Mother Earth. So they're looking at the plants, the trees, the rocks, the earth, everything. That's all part of their job. And then we talk about, folklore. And people have written about this for as long as people could write. People have written about folklore, about little strange things that lived upon the land, all these kind of things. It's not just a figment of people's imagination, because folklore is really it's about history of people, what they experienced, or tales that people used to talk about, different things that were, around about them, were not of the physical world. But then we realize if these people or these little elemental beings are maintaining the world that we live in, they have to be upon our world. But we can't see them all the time because our minds are not trained to open up to that vibration. But when we learn to work and sit in the power and open the vibration to have a look around about, then we become more open to it. So we realize that their world is part of our world. It's another time zone.
What an interesting way to look at that.
Yeah, so their time zone, spirit world's a time zone. When I first joined, or we understanding of spirit world, I remember even the tutors then saying that 15 years ago they talked about the spirit world becoming closer to us. But that was when the medium, he was saying 15 years before he started or whatever, or 15 years ago, I remember hearing about that. So, and I've been in, obviously, I think 14 years or something, been working now as a medium. So that's 29 years between the two of us, even on that comment. But they are walking closer to us. The veil is becoming thinner.
Oh, yes.
We are becoming more aware of it.
It is.
Yeah, people are accepting it. And we are evolving as human beings. We have to evolve. We have to change. If you're thinking the same as you're doing, even within your mediumship, if you're thinking the same today or you're doing the same today within your mediumship as you were doing 6 months ago, you're doing something wrong. Because the energy is alive. It changes all the time.
Yeah.
And even yourself, I mean, you have a wonderful, as you say, physics, you have a scientific background, all that kind of thing. But I'm often a great believer that if you look about the many great minds or many scientists that are on our world just now, and there's a lot, isn't there?
Mm-hmm. There are.
Look how many great minds are in the spirit world. There's a lot more, isn't there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I often think those in the spirit side of life, that they're looking at different ways to help humanity, to be able to help us. So these great minds, these Einsteins, these all Teslas, all these people, that we talk about today with the great inventions and all that kind of thing, they're still on the spirit side of life, inventing
Yes.
things. But they work together collectively. I mean, the time is right. They bring these things back to us. When someone here can understand it,
Yes.
and it helps humanity as we go forward. And I often wonder about it when something newly has been invented. Does a person just wake up one morning and think, wait a minute, I'm going to invent a car that doesn't take any electricity, it only works on electricity now. Because all these things were experimented, and these people are now on the spirit side of life. So they continue their work, and they bring it to help us.
It's definitely a partnership, whether we're aware of it or not. And so, Chris, wow. I mean, you have had such a colorful.
It's so interesting. So interesting.
It certainly is. But, we need to let our audience know, how do they find out more about you? You have a website, correct?
That's correct. Yes, I have a website, which is chrisratterpsychicsurgeon.com, Chris Ratter Healer, which is on Instagram. We have Facebook, which is Chris Ratter Psychic Surgeon, or just Chris Ratter. If you put up Chris Ratter Healer onto your Google search for Scotland, my name will come up, I'm sure. If anybody gets in touch, I try to obviously answer as best of my ability.
Wonderful. And so we want to thank you so much for joining us and sharing.
No, thank you. The new book can be bought on Amazon if anybody wants to buy it, or the book depository, all these things. And just, you ladies are doing exactly this, aren't you? You're spreading understanding.
That's our mission.
It has been a pleasure, Chris. It was delightful meeting you.
Thank you very much.
We thank you again for joining us. And of course, we invite you to join us next time as we journey beyond the Reiki Gateway with Kathleen Johnson and Andrea Kennedy.